So abusers, they make themselves the arbiter of reality in the abuse dynamic. So whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends, whether it's a partner, the abuser, this other person, they've decided that they know that whatever they say is correct, that they are the only ones who can make any kind of determination about what things are. And anything that you say, any opinions you have, any evidence you bring, they are going to discount and even punish you for bringing up, right? What they are doing is they are saying to a victim, you and the way you look at the world and everything that you think, all of this is wrong. And you should just leave the thinking to me because you're not logical or you're too logical or, whatever form their justification takes. The point is to undermine your confidence in your own like thinking abilities, assessment abilities. When we are looking at the world, we're gathering information, we're gathering data points, pieces of evidence, and then we start to make an analysis. We determine like, okay, what do I think about this? And we might consult other people to get outside or third party opinions, or that parent, friend that's abusive, we'll ask other people for their take, for their perspective, and then we might adjust our own, or we might go back around and look for more information, and then we come up with a conclusion, and then based off that conclusion, we will decide our next steps forward. However, abusers will tell you that the information you gathered is incorrect. Don't believe your eyes. Don't believe what you see. Believe what I tell you. Uh, or they'll say you weren't entitled to gather that information or evidence in the first place. And therefore that you can't use it to form any kind of opinion, come to any conclusion. Therefore, you shouldn't be able to take whatever the steps are. It is remarkable how legalistic abusers are and how much victims who are operating in this construct with good faith, like they genuinely think that the abuser means what they say and has a consistent internal schema of the world and right and wrong, etc. When in fact it's really a moving target for whatever serves the abuser, right? Like it's easier for them to make arguments because their only goal is to achieve an outcome, and they are happy to use any argument that will accomplish that, whereas the victim feels constrained by the things that they agree to and the logic that they use. They're trying to be ethical and correct, and the abuser is trying to be the one in power. And so those two goals put you at a different relationship with information. When your goal is to win, you're going to discount information that doesn't help your case. Whereas when your goal is to be correct, you're going to take that information in and really consider it and possibly adapt sort of what you were thinking. So already victims are hamstrung by their own desire to be consistent internally. Abusers, however, they are hamstrung by the fact that they are not tethered to reality. So at some point, what they're doing is going to catch up with them. But it is very frustrating when you're the recipient of it to watch them seemingly defy reality with the nonsense. So one, I always recommend that victims never kind of get into litigation with abusers because you have to understand that it is not a legitimate discussion. It's not a legitimate debate. Their focus is on being right. They want to undo everything, every step of the process that you're making. So like undermine your observations, your evidence gathering. They will sabotage your conclusions by coming after your analysis and telling you that your analysis is incorrect. And most victims of abuse, being involved in this process with a person that does not have like respect toward them, all it's doing is giving more information to the abuser for the abuser to pick apart. The less information you give, the better. And I'm not saying it's not hard, because victims of abuse have been conditioned to be explaining themselves. And so you're going to feel like this internal urge to just explain more and to get buy-in from the abuser. And you know, in the back of our minds, we think, oh, if we just explain it well enough, that they'll get it and understand at least our perspective, even if they don't agree. Because that's how victims of abuse operate. We are putting our idea of how people work onto the abuser. The abuser is putting their idea of how people work onto the victim. And the thing is, the abuser's idea of how people work is abusive because they are abusive. And the victim's idea of how people work is often like naively good because the victim is working so hard to be that way. So they're doing the same thing, but because they're coming from different places, the outcome is different. So if you're a victim of abuse, okay. What I see with people who follow my work, so whether on the subreddit or whether in the videos, they are trying to figure out the abuse dynamic, what specifically is abusive, and then go back to the abuser and say, here's this thing you're doing. And the reason why I can do this is because I've been doing abuse, blah, blah, blah stuff for like 14 years. No, longer than that. Honestly, at this point, it's been decades. And so not only that, but I have paralegal training. So when I have this conversation with abusers, I can be effective in the sense that I am explaining things effectively, correctly, accurately. However, where it is not effective is the fact that the abusers have alloplastic defenses. They are not interested in reality. They are not interested in what is correct. They are interested in achieving their specific goal. And therefore, when you are actually correct and can counter all of their like rebuttals and counter arguments and etc., that's when they often become physically abusive. Because if they can't overpower you with the argument, with their emotions, with their logic, they will then often move to physicality. So taking this information to an abuser to explain to them how they're being abusive, it doesn't work. They're not going to agree with you. Even if they agree with you for like a hot second, like for a moment, oh my gosh, they will give them 30 minutes, give them a day, give them a week, give them a month. They'll be back to their default settings because they are not internally challenging their own thoughts and beliefs that are driving their entitlement, that are driving their abuse of you. So you might be able to corner them for a moment if what they've done is egregious enough, but they will flip back to default and then make it your responsibility for causing them to act whatever way it was. So even when they're wrong, it's not their fault. They're shame avoidant, they're blame avoidant, they have alloplastic defenses, and their internal schema is founded on the fact that they are not wrong. Like whatever is happening is not their fault. They have entitlement to whatever it is they want. It's intrinsically selfish. Even if they're presenting like a very vulnerable person who seems like they just need help or whatever, it's still about what they want at another person's expense, right? So it's important to recognize you can go through all of the steps with an abuser, but the videos here are not so that you can do that because that it is not going to help you. Now, one thing that I've learned as a paralegal is how to process information. And it's something that most people aren't really taught explicitly unless they've had maybe like a media literacy course. And so it's important to recognize the information gathering process. Because when we don't understand the information gathering process, then we don't know how to weight like evidence that we're getting. So you have primary sources and secondary sources. Your primary sources are going to be your direct evidence, observations, things that you see, things that other people have seen. When you're talking about historical documents, for example, your primary evidence is like the diaries from the people who were there and were writing about the thing. So it doesn't mean that it's objectively factual, but it means that it is the closest information to the issue or the incident. And that therefore, if you have enough of this, you can put together what is like a reliable pattern of information. So that second layer of information is going to be the analysis piece. And when you're looking at the analysis piece, most people think that they can have an opinion, which I mean is fair, but a lot of people are having an opinion and it's not an educated and informed opinion. Like in the legal field, you want an expert witness. Like who knows the most about this? Often you're looking at credentialing. So if somebody has a degree or like a license, something where an independent third body has vetted this particular group of people. So from a historical perspective, you might be looking at editorials in specific journals, like like a science journal, like a social science journal or something like that, or things that are within that community for the experts. Then you've got like your layers removed, which is random people having random opinions about things. And so obviously we don't normally weight that group of people very highly. And then you have people who are relaying what experts say and then sort of using the fact that they're doing that to position themselves as an expert, which is, we want to be careful with that. And that isn't even, I feel like people will automatically blame social media for that. But like Oprah was doing that, from back in the day. So this is not just a social media issue. So when you're looking at information, the source, the analysis, you want to be looking at where the information is coming from. Then what kind of analysis is occurring? Who is making that analysis? What is their intrinsic qualification to do so? And, whether or not they have like some kind of a bias. Now, when we apply this to the abuser, they are directing what information is gathered, directing which information is considered or not considered. They are driving the analysis. And the thing is, when you're in a relationship, you have an equal right to analyze and have opinions over what's occurring. Some things will be facts, some things will be opinions, and then you make your analysis, you come to a conclusion. So for an abuser to basically tell you, you can't engage in that process is itself abusive, because that is something intrinsic to being a human being. So they capture the information piece, they capture the analysis piece, they capture the conclusion piece, they capture the, therefore the next steps, any plan that you make. And so victims end up getting kind of like caught in this rhetorical strategy and debate approach that they take, which is, again, has no place in a relationship, a regular relationship. In a regular relationship, you're having a discussion. You're sharing perspectives. You come to a middle ground that's not compromising anybody's safety. And so this argument over reality is really the foundation of why the abuse dynamic is so pervasive and so damaging, because it's not just the assault on your physical self, but it's the assault on your ability as a human being to just exist in and interpret the world and to have an opinion. Like, that's a thing we get to do. We get to have an opinion. And abusers do not want that. So anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.